All right, let's dive right into this incredibly fascinating explainer about the classic 1959 Festinger and Carlsmith study. I promise you, this is going to completely flip how you think about your own brain. We're going to look at the exact hidden mechanisms of how our minds justify the things we do, especially when those things totally clash with who we think we are. To get started, I want you to literally picture yourself in this exact scenario. Really imagine it. If a researcher walked up and handed you a crisp $20 bill, which, by the way, back in 1959 was a pretty hefty chunk of change, would that be enough to make you look a complete stranger in the eye and tell them a blatant fib? Honestly, most of us would probably shrug, pocket the cash, and say, yeah, sure, why not? The external reward is super obvious. But what if we flip the script? What if your reward dropped down to basically pocket change? Just one single dollar. Would you still do it? And maybe more importantly, if you did agree to do it, how would you feel about yourself afterward? Well, this exact dilemma is the brilliant little trap that Leon Festinger and James Carlsmith set for their students. You see, when our actions don't match our inner thoughts, our brain essentially panics. It creates this psychological friction, a really uncomfortable tension that we are biologically hardwired to fix. This is the core definition of cognitive dissonance. Your brain absolutely hates it when your private beliefs clash with your public behavior. And, as we'll see, it's going to go to some truly astonishing lengths just to restore that internal harmony. Okay, so let's get into section 1, the elaborate setup, and frankly, the world's most boring tasks. The researchers needed to create a baseline experience for their subjects, and they deliberately designed it to be excruciatingly, almost painfully boring. We're talking about packing and unpacking spools on a tray, and then using one hand to turn 48 square pegs a quarter turn, over and over again, for a solid mind-numbing hour. The goal here was absolute certainty. They had to guarantee that every single person had a strongly negative private opinion of what they were doing. And the sheer theatricality of this 1959 methodology is just amazing. The researchers didn't just leave the students alone in a room. Nope. The experimenter sat right there doing this whole fake stopwatch routine, furiously scribbling notes. They did all this just to make the subjects believe that this incredibly dull task was the entire experiment. But in reality, the true experiment hadn't even started yet. So here is where the masterful deception kicks into gear. The researcher suddenly shifts their demeanor, acts super embarrassed, and pretends their regular assistant just called in sick. Then they ask the subject for a massive favor. Could you step in and brief the next waiting subject? But here's the catch. You have to tell this waiting student, who is actually a hired actress, that the boring peg turning was actually exciting, intriguing, and a lot of fun. To do this, one group is offered a single dollar, and the other is offered $20. Which brings us to section 2, the dissonance equation. This is all about balancing the mental scales. Festinger actually went ahead and modeled this mental tension mathematically. He figured that your total dissonance equals your clashing thoughts, the D, divided by your clashing thoughts plus your justifying thoughts, the C. It's basically a mental scale. The magnitude of your mental tension naturally drops as the number and importance of your justifications go up. So a massive $20 cash reward, that's a very heavy, very powerful justification sitting right there on the C side of the scale. Just think about the clear divide here. The person paid $20 has a fantastic external justification for looking a peer in the eye and lying. They can just tell themselves, hey, yeah, I lied, but I got $20. Literally anyone would do that. Their mental tension is totally low. But the poor subject who only got $1, they have almost zero external justification. Their brain is screaming, I just compromised my integrity for a measly dollar? That makes no sense. They are experiencing maximum psychological tension. All right, let's look at section 3, the shocking results. Who actually liked the boring spools? I want you to take a quick guess right now. Logically, you'd probably think being paid more money makes you associate a task with positive feelings, right? Or does the brain play a magnificent trick on the group that got paid way less? Because after the subjects lied to the actress, they were sent down the hall to a completely different researcher posing as someone evaluating the psychology department. Here, they were asked how they actually, truly felt about those boring tasks. Well, we don't have to guess. Take a look at the actual authentic data straight from the original 1959 publication. It shows the average ratings given by the subjects during that final, theoretically honest interview, mapped across the 3 different conditions: the control group, the $1 group, and the $20 group. Just notice this massive, undeniable spike for the $1 group. The control group rated the task in the negative at minus 0.45. The $20 group rated it practically neutral at minus 0.05. But the $1 group, they rated it a positive 1.35. Because they lacked a sufficient external reward for lying to that girl, their brain just could not handle the dissonance. So to reduce that tension, their subconscious literally changed their private opinion to believe they actually enjoyed turning the pegs. Festinger and Carlsmith summed it up perfectly with this profound takeaway. The greater the reward offered, the smaller was the effect. If you just want to force someone to comply and go through the motions, pay them a lot. But if you want to permanently shift someone's internal, private beliefs, you offer them just enough to force compliance, but absolutely nothing more. That tiny reward deficit is exactly what maximizes the internal psychological shift. And it gets crazier. When asked if they had any desire to participate in a similar experiment in the future, the control and $20 groups were solidly in the negative. But the $1 group? They expressed a significantly higher desire to come back and do the boring peg turning all over again. They didn't just tell a lie, they fully rewrote their reality to justify their actions. Moving right along to Section 4, the cognitive consequences. Did they just try harder? Now, science doesn't just stop at a cool result. Festinger and Carlsmith had to rigorously defend their theory and rule out an alternative explanation proposed by previous scientists, specifically Janis and King. This alternate theory basically asked, hey, could it be that the $1 subjects just felt super guilty about lying for so little, so they mentally rehearsed more arguments? Like, did they just try way harder to sell the lie to the waiting girl, and by doing so accidentally fast-talked themselves into believing it? It's a fair question. Was it really dissonance or just enthusiastic mental rehearsal? But Festinger was totally steps ahead and built an absolutely airtight case. They had actually secretly recorded the conversations between the subjects and the hired girl. They took these tapes, handed them over to two independent judges who were completely blind to which student got paid what, and had them rate the persuasiveness. And the verdict? Zero statistical difference in how hard the two groups tried to sell the lie. The $1 group wasn't trying harder at all. That confirmed the opinion change came purely from the crushing internal pressure of cognitive dissonance. So, what's the ultimate takeaway from all this? Human beings deeply, desperately crave internal consistency. If the external world doesn't provide a good enough excuse for our actions, our subconscious mind will step right in and literally alter our perception of reality just so we can sleep at night. Understanding this explainer really empowers you to recognize those moments when your own brain might be tricking you into justifying a bad job, a bad relationship, or a bad decision simply because you committed to it without a big enough reward. I'm going to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought. Take a quick moment right now to reflect. What lies have you told yourself today just to justify your own actions? Ponder that the next time you find yourself aggressively defending something you secretly know you don't really like. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning how your mind works.